Okay.
Okay. We need a motion to recess our council meeting.
I can give you a motion to
So
recess,
moved by
council.
Tamara, all in favor?
In favor. In favor.
In favor.
Carried. We need a motion to enter public hearing for bylaw 1962 and bylaw 1963.
I can give that to enter the public hearing for bylaw 1962 and bylaw 1963.
All in favor?
In favor.
In favor.
In favor.
Okay, carried.
In favor.
Thank you. Okay, so everybody that's in the room, we'll just introduce everybody real quick, and we'll start with Jennifer.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were going to ask the audience first. Jennifer Croson, Division 5 Counselor, Hayes area.
John Takeda, Division 2, South of Tabor.
Merrill Harris, Division 1. Also online is Councillor Haug, who represents Division 7, which is the Retlaw area, which is the area that this is in. Councillor Bruin is unable to be with us today. Go ahead, Bruin.
Lost my train of thought. Mary Reynolds, Division 6, Inchen area.
Tamara Mianega, Division 4, Tabor, north to the river.
Arliss Crofts, CAO, and Candace Robinson, Recording Secretary.
Bonnie Bruner, Planning Advisor for the MD.
Kirk Hughes, I'm the Director of Planning for the MD of Tabor.
And go ahead just as loud as you can so that they maybe can hear.
Michelle Lancer.
Okay, and for those that have got screens in front of you, you'll see a list on the right-hand side. There's a number of staff that are online just in different rooms in the building here or at home, working from home. But those that you see on the side are also part of the meeting today. We'll now have Bonnie explain the purpose of the bylaw and outline the details of the bylaw.
Okay. So the purpose of the bylaw today is Phase 4, an amendment to King Arthur's Lakefront Resort, as well as the rezone to private commercial recreation, which would accommodate the proposed campground expansion. King Arthur's Lakefront Resort is proposing to add 51 new fully serviced campsites. 49 would be located south of the existing campground, and then 2 in Phase 3. The addition of Phase 4 would result in a total of 242 sites within the development. Currently, there's 191 existing, and the estimated density with full build-out would be between 605 to 726. That would be assuming between 2.5 to 3 people per campsite. The seasonal operation remains the same for the previous phases, which is May 1st to October 1st. There's no nightly or public camping proposed, and quiet time remains the same from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. As with the previous phases, there will be some ancillary structures. That is limited to sheds, decks, and gazebos, and all of those do require development permit approval from the MD. Servicing in this phase includes potable water provided by 2 existing 4,000-gallon above-ground tanks that are located in Phase 3. Each of the campsites will have individual water capacity through a water distribution line to each campsite, underground electrical and sewage disposal via a buried pipeline connected to a new septic field system that is east of Phase 4. There'll be some privies throughout, similar to the previous phases, and then self-contained garbage receptacles, which will be emptied weekly. Landscaping is also proposed, and that's illustrated in drawing 3. There is a portion of the landscaping that extends onto BRID property, and Mr. Lancer has received written authorization from BRID indicating no objection to the landscaping proposed in that reservoir right-of-way. Proposed bylaw 1963 is the rezoning component, and that involves rezoning approximately 8.2 acres from the current zoning of rural agricultural to private commercial recreation. Private commercial recreation is a discretionary use. However, through this process with the ASP, we're establishing a framework for the development permit that would follow. Just a couple of comments on the area structure plan itself. The septic is proposed to be a separate system, and the applicant has had septic soils analysis conducted and indicated that it is suitable for a septic field system. We did request additional information about the volume of sewage since there's multiple systems, and that could put him in Alberta Environment's jurisdiction based on the information submitted by the applicant's private sewage disposal consultant. He's indicated that the property would not receive more than 25 meters cubed of sewage each day, and therefore it would still fall within the private septic standards. The access, having said that though, he's still going to be responsible for obtaining any necessary approvals, and if it does end up being an Alberta environment component, then obviously that would have to be dealt with. Access, Range Road 16.5 does serve as the access to the previous phases as well as this proposed phase. And 16.5 is proposed to be upgraded to a hard surface at this point in time, and upon circulation of the ASP to Public Works, they've indicated no issues or concerns with respect to impact to the road, and no negative impacts to the road as a result of the location of any of the proposed septic fields or the drainage pattern. Drainage is identified in the ASP as well. BRAD does have a registered easement for a drain that runs through the property. In discussion with Mr. Lancer, he's indicated that that drain has now been buried. However, there is an easement to protect that, and it does bisect phase 4. In discussion with BRAD, they've indicated that that easement does protect their interest at this time. The provincial government does have a wetlands layer, and the wetlands layer indicates that Marsh Reservoir as well as portions around it are open water. If you can see in your attachment there, oftentimes this layer sometimes contains errors, and I would suspect in this case that's probably the circumstance. It does show the yellow area as part of what is open water. In discussion with BRID, who used to own this property, they've indicated that they're not aware of this ever having been part of the reservoir or part of open water associated with Marsh Reservoir. However, we do have a policy in the MDP that requires some notation of potential wetlands. So what I am recommending is that if council does approve this, that we do an amendment to include a section in the ASP that indicates that the developer is responsible for reviewing and considering provincial wetlands inventory as applicable, and then ensuring any development is in compliance with applicable provincial wetlands policy. Lastly, there is an oil and gas well in proximity of the proposed development on the south end, and this has been demonstrated that the campground would meet the 100-meter setback from that natural gas well. The application was circulated to Alberta Health Services, Bow River Irrigation District, and Alberta Environment, as well as a newspaper notice in the Taber Times, and then direct notice to affected landowners. And as of today, we haven't received any written comment from any of these review agencies, nor have we received a written comment from adjacent landowners. I do know that Mr. Richardson is Richard, getting mixed up, is here to make comment. And that's just a quick overview of the proposal, and I can answer any questions you may have, and the applicants are here to talk to the proposal in more detail.
Okay. Any questions around the table? Is there anybody in the audience who would like to talk in support of the bylaw? Anybody who would like to make any comments in opposition to the bylaw? Please use the mic.
Yeah, this campground has cost me a lot of money over the years, just from I think spite. A lot of things that's happened is just from spite. Because I was against the campground right from the start. You know, that's why I live out in the country, for privacy and kind get away from people, but, and, you know, get away from traffic. But anyway, first, I guess the first thing he did is, put a big bright light up in his campground, showing it right at my house. It took the MD and about 2 years for him to, you know, get him so he would shut it off. He said it was for his campers so they could see where they're going, eh? But it was a spotlight kind of, and it shone right at the house, so I had to plant, buy 8-foot, 10-foot trees and plant them in my yard so it wouldn't shine in my windows when I'm trying to sleep. And then we finally got that done, and that light was, we decided to shut it off, didn't need it. So I spent about $1,300 on trees. And then a while later, he takes me to court for trespassing. He said I was trespassing on his land. And I wasn't. He didn't have no proof. But he took me to Tabor Court and had to go through that. And I didn't get charged for that because I wasn't on there. And there's no tracks, no proof, nothing was stolen. They said that I was looking at his pivot or something, brand new pivot. I says, you know, maybe 30 years ago or something, pivot would interest me, but not anymore. It doesn't. You know, I've seen lots of them. So, and then he goes and, after that, he goes and drains all his land, his 2 quarters. So it drains off and it drains into my place. He had I got pictures of and I'll just put them up here if you guys don't mind. I just put some pictures up. Anyway, you can go through them. They're all right. And anyway, so I finally got the environment. It took 6 years. I got the environment to make it so it don't drain into my property. And all I had to do is dig a little ditch along the fence with a V ditcher, not a big ditcher, but he had a high hole come in there and drain a slough, about a 5-acre slough, 3 feet deep, into my place. And so I got the environment after him, and he finally had to fix it with a little trench into the drain ditch, which is very simple to do. So it was just for spite. And then after that, he adds on to the 3rd stage of his property, and he was supposed to put a 6-foot deer fence in. And to me, a 6-foot deer fence is 6 foot high, and it's something that you could put there and a deer couldn't go through it, or, you know, keep deer in or something like that. You know, it's be a little heavier, but anyway, you put a 5-foot fence up with holes. Well, my dog has no trouble getting through the hole in the bottom. Like, I got a collie dog, he can go in and out of there, ain't no trouble. And you put that up there, and my cow got through there, I guess. I didn't know where she got through, but she got through the fence underneath. She must have been grazing. He phoned the SPCA on me, said I want to leave the house. They come and looked at it. My cows were fine, but you know, they see greener grass on the other side, so they were pushing on the page wire fence, and that little staple there, that's what he put it up with. And the cow pushed the bottom of the fence out and got underneath there and got in. Rather than calling me so I'd go get her or tell me where it happened, they wanted to take me to court. And they said she wrecked 40 trees. They first got a claims agency after me, so then she wrecked 40 trees. I says, God, I don't think she could wreck 40 trees overnight, you know. And,
Richard, can I stop you for just a minute?
Yeah.
Let's deal with what the bylaw is. We
Okay.
don't need 100 years of history here. We
Yeah,
just need to,
well-
why are you opposed to the bylaw?
I'm not opposed. I'm not opposed to him expanding. but there are some things I want, and I guess I was saying why I want it. I'm trying to get to why I want it. There's after my cow got in and everything, he took me to court. It cost me a bunch of money for a lawyer. Then I go and put a good 7-wire fence up, barbed wires, 6 barbed wires, 1 high tensile steel with electric, all around my quarter. But I mean the high tensile steel is all around the quarter. Between me and ours is 6 wires and the high tensile. So then he goes and puts a slab fence up and cuts the deer fence every 40 feet for some reason and just leaves it there. So there's the things that are happening. Right now, I guess for the deal to go through is what I want is I want to clean up that fence I'd cut because it's on my side of it's on his property, but it's on beside my fence, and it's gonna get all tangled up with weeds and stuff, and just be a mess. So I want to clean that mess up, and also I want a 6-foot deer fence from his Texas gate, where so far the deer fence is now, from his Texas gate all the way down to the entrance of his other Texas gate, to keep garbage off my property, or help keep it off. It's not gonna keep it all off, but it'll help keep a bunch off. Plus, it'll keep a barrier in between my fence and his fence if he puts that fence up. So he's not mowing right against my post and hitting the post with his mower, like it's happened already. He used to have a fence up there and took it down just the other day for some reason. So he mowed the grass, and now he's hitting the posts and mowing close enough that's just about underneath the wire. I got 6 wires there, so the first wire is 6 inches off the ground. Right? So I want him to build a second fence, a deer fence, to keep the garbage and keep. It's just like the fertilizer plant in Vauxhall. They got a barrier from the lease grazing. They got a barrier there, so there's 2 fences right side by side. Same as the graveyard, same thing. Same as Miller's excavating. They got the same thing there, all on Grantham Road there. So that's what I was looking for, is a barrier, and I want a 6-foot deer fence, not a 5-foot fence. I want a 6-foot fence. That's what it says in the deal here. He's supposed to put a 6-foot fence. He hasn't put a 6-foot fence up yet. It's only 5. Then he's supposed to put 8-foot chain link fence around his garbage containers. That's another deal that was in here, and it's never been done. And one other thing, let's see what else was there he's supposed to do, and it's never been done. Just give me a minute here. Oh yeah, okay, I think I got it then. That's a 6-foot deer fence. The chain link fence around his garbage. And I think that's about it. If I think of it, I might come back.
Okay, thank you
I
for,
just brought some garbage. I phoned the RCMP about litter, and then the RCMP phoned,
Henry Peters.
yeah, and so it's been better, but there's still a little bit of garbage going to my place, and that's since I phoned Henry, that bag full of, it's covers for wheels from the campers and stuff, 2 of them, and beer bottles, water bottles, lots of plastic shopping bags.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Anybody want to make any comments in rebuttal of what you just heard?
Lancer. I have no problem doing the fence on our south side of our road. The 6-foot deer fence, we can do that if that's a problem. That works for you, Richard. And other than that, yeah, we can do some chains to help keep the lids on the garbage cans closed, and we do get pretty serious winds.
Yep, we do. Is there anything, Bonnie, in the previous developments about things that Richard has brought up, such as the 6-foot deer fence or the 8-foot chain link fence? I mean, I don't know what's in the previous development approvals.
Yeah, I don't have the development approvals with me,
Okay,
but certainly that's something that we can look into, and if there's
Right.
non-compliance issues, we
Yeah.
can undertake action. Knowing this, development permit application still needs to be made if this expansion is authorized.
Right.
And so we can also place additional conditions at the time of the development to ensure aesthetics and things like wind and garbage
Yeah.
debris are adequately addressed.
Right.
But I'm not aware of anything specific without the permits.
all right. Mr. Lancer.
Hi. I just want to say we've done everything that has been asked of us. We've complied 100%. I don't really know what else we can do. For us, like the deer fence that which we put in has been all approved by EMD of Tabor, and that's what they wanted. And that's what we did. And the new section that we're doing, we're also putting the deer fence in that whole section. To do it along Richard's quarter of land where we're a quarter mile away from the park, I see no purpose in it absolutely at all. The whole park itself is contained in this fence. And the other fence that he's talking about, we met with him. He preferred to have an 8-foot slab fence, which nobody told us to do, which we put that in thinking that that was going to make him happy. And at the end of the day, absolutely nothing's going to make him happy. So I don't know what else to say, but as far as complying, we've been 100% compliant.
Okay, thank you. We'll move now to council, to give them the opportunity to ask questions, either in favor or opposition of the proposed bylaw. Anybody have any questions? Murray?
Around your garbage, do you have a chain link fence now? Or some kind of containment or whatever?
We've gone with we've put in all commercial dumpsters, just like the town of Tabor. So all of the dumpsters have lids on them, and they're all emptied twice a week. So that's the chain link was originally when we just had one garbage container, and but now we have 22, I think. 22. I think they're 1.5 yards or 2 yard. They're the exact same as what the town.
Okay.
Has.
So then wouldn't actually need a chain link fence around them then, would they?
No.
Being that many spread around would be. No, good, thank you.
Any other councillors have any comments, either in favor or opposition of the proposed bylaw?
So I guess this question might be for Bonnie, just wondering if, so that requirement of the chain link fence around the garbage containers, was that in the original approval or?
Yeah, we'll have to pull the development application approval. It's not specified in the area structure plan, but it could be a condition of the development approval. I can go find that if you'd like.
This is similar to the problems we had in Grassy Lake with our garbage containment, which would be similar in size, I guess, to what Mr. Lancer has there. The fence was very helpful in keeping a lot of that garbage out of getting on the highway. And I think it would be the same thing here. If you can contain it at its source, and keep it within that, I guess, garbage compound, it might have less likelihood to carry on beyond that.
Well, I'm back. We haven't had any garbage concerns at all. We've never been notified by the police that there ever was a problem. So yeah, I mean, yeah, they're commercial garbage containers. I mean, for us to put 22 chain link barriers around them, that'd be quite an ordeal, actually. So, and by all means, you guys are more than welcome to come and look and to see, you know, like if you have garbage blowing, Richard be a half a mile away, there'd be a lot of garbage in between our place and his place. I mean, anybody would see that and notice that. So.
Okay, any other questions around the council table?
I guess Art has a short memory. I've got a letter here from, he was then Constable Hughes. And it's something like, you know, littering is, could be from $100 to $10,000 fine. Because I did complain. And he did send this letter to me and Art both. Because there was a problem years ago. And there still is a problem, not as much. Did you guys get that picture of the snow on the fence? Yeah. That was just spite too. There's no reason for it.
Okay, any other more questions from council towards either in favor or in opposition of the proposed bylaw?
Reeve Harris, I'd just like to address the issue of the fence that is being discussed. It's actually east of the development area, so if this is something that is of interest to include in the area structure plan, it would need to be included in the area structure plan, since it would be challenging at the time of a development permit application to rationalize that that fence would be necessary for this expansion. So that
So
probably
really,
should
we're
be
just
discussed.
dealing with the proposed area expansion and not a fence all the way back at the north end of the
Right. So,
complete development.
I mean, you can address this in this area structure plan because it is an expansion. And so the original area structure plan doesn't extend all the way to where the Texas gates are. So you would have to include that in this area structure plan.
Okay.
So I just have one comment about that. So Brody, when you said it's not a concern for you to put up the fence, are we talking about the same fence then? I just want to make sure I understand what fence we're erecting or what fence we're talking about.
Like I can, if I get got a copy of a paper, I can show you where we're gonna have a deer fence.
We can
all-
bring it up there.
Yeah, okay.
Even the first map looks pretty good. In Schedule A, that map looks very good. I think we should be able to.
In relation to the ASP amendment, Councillor Mianega, you're looking at Schedule 1?
Land use district redesignation, Schedule A from the rural agriculture. It's right at the bottom of, under the bylaw of 11.2.
Oh, okay, it's on the bylaw.
Sorry. Yeah, just to me, that map, I can visualize it. Just for me, I need to have perspective of what Mr. Ferguson's talking about and what Mr. Lancer is talking about, just so I'm sure that it's the same thing.
You're talking about this visual here.
Yes, that's correct.
So the whole right side is the fence, like right for the development.
Out of the development. No, that's the MD Wilson.
Okay.
Go down.
Right there, okay.
Right here?
Yeah,
Keep going down.
yeah. Keep going down, right from there, right to the south end will be all deer fence.
Right
all
here.
deer.
Along here.
So, Richard, is that where you want to see the fence? Where do you want to see it?
I want to see, well, up there, right there, and designate there all the way to the 65. Just so we'll
That way.
yeah, right there. So I want to see a fence. In between my place and the road, because I know people have a habit of throwing things out the window.
Okay, but Bonnie, back to what you were saying, that's outside the scope of what we're talking about today.
Yes, so if that's something that's going to be included, it has to be included in the area structure plan because it is beyond the extent of the original ASP. We do have the development permit approvals for the different phases. So in phase 1, it was indicated that the developer must install 600 feet of a 5-foot tall page wire fence along the north boundary and the east boundary of the proposed campground property.
Okay, so that's been done.
Yes.
The 5-foot fence has been done.
And then it says the developer must install an 8-foot tall chain link fence around the dumpsters. So it is a condition of the development
And at that point in
permit
time, the dumpsters were all in one location.
Just that one. Just that one area.
So our dumpsters are, big dumpsters with lids, and then if you dump them into the trailer, that has a line, keep anything from blowing up.
So the conditions have been met.
I don't know, I guess we're looking at different notes. I don't know where.
And this isn't part of what we're here to do today.
So 6 foot.
Well, I think this is more of a compliance issue than the issue that's in front of us today. So let's carry on with what's in front of us today, and you guys can work on whether the conditions have been met or they haven't been met. So let's get back to why we're here today, which is to a new area structure plan and then a rezoning from rural agriculture to private recreation. That's the word I was looking for. I knew it had something to do with recreation. So back to why we're here today. Any further comments from council or questions from council on the proposed changes? The area structure plan or the conversion from rural agriculture to private recreation, private commercial recreation, I believe. No? Okay. All right. No more questions?
Sorry, Meryl.
go
I
ahead.
do think before, like, are you planning on recessing the public hearing soon? Is that
Yes.
what you're thinking? I do think we need clarification on how large the area structure plan needs to be and what is included before we close.
Okay.
I don't feel that we have enough information to carry forward unless we recess and then come back at a later date just to clarify that. Just since first reading's been given and then any clarification on any amendments, because there was note of one amendment in regards to wetlands. Unless, was there anything else, Bonnie?
Not in addition to what's been discussed today.
Do you need more information? What are you looking for?
Well, I would say we need clarification on whether or not said fence should or should not be included in the area structure plan. I think that's something that has to be addressed before we make a decision or give second or third reading to the amendment. The rezone, can those be dealt with separately, the bylaw for the area structure plan and the rezoning?
Yes, but the way the MD typically undertakes the process is you'd pass the area structure plan first and then the rezone. However, I would suggest in this case, since we're just dealing with a fence, I would not recommend rezoning that area to the private commercial, that it just simply be addressed in the area structure plan that this fence is to extend for whatever portion. And that would be a section in the area structure plan, would not require rezoning that portion.
So I have another question. So in the event that we include that area in the area structure plan that doesn't give a green light on the requirement of having a fence, it just gives us the opportunity when we issue a development permit that if that is something that needs to be done, it can be done at that time?
If you indicate that a fence is to be constructed in the area structure plan, then the development authority is to place a condition that a fence is to be constructed. The point is that this area that we're talking about is outside of the area structure plan. So if a development application comes forward, we're dealing with the expansion of phase 4. So if this is contingent upon the expansion of phase 4, it does need to be addressed in the area structure plan, that a fence will be constructed from here to here. Perhaps you're not indicating the size or height or type, but it does need to be addressed that this fence is a consideration in issuance of a development permit. Or alternatively, you could word it in a way that it should be given consideration, and then it's up to the development authority whether or not to require that as a condition of approval.
Can I address that?
It's just questions, so that would be good. Thanks, Art.
Well, I can't see my TV now. So
Do you want to take the mic out? You can stand back if you like.
from let me see, from the west corner for a full quarter mile, we done this fence, which after we done it, he wasn't happy. Then he wanted a wooden fence, which we also did. And our road, we calcium our road for a full half a mile. We are the only people in the MD of Taber that do that. The road speed limit on that half a mile of road is 60 kilometers, specifically for the neighbor. I mean, everything in the world has been addressed. Like, you know, where do we stop? Like, our whole park is contained in this fence. So why would we start going another quarter mile? You know, like, if we had a garbage problem, I could totally understand it. You know, we've dealt with everything we possibly can. I mean,
So at present, and like I said, you're not in front of your picture, but at present, from the west fence over to just with Arlos, just show us exactly where the fence is.
okay, the hand was just up in the corner there. You go up right from there. You got 6 foot or 5 foot or whatever to that point, and then from there to the corner is all 8-foot slab fence. And then
And then there's an 8-foot slab fence going.
yeah, it's also right behind. Who's doing the handle?
That's me.
Oh, okay, then I'll just go to you. Yeah. You got a pens? And I can just. Okay, so from here to right here is the fence, deer fence, and then from here to this point is 8-foot slab fence. And then it's also 8-foot slab fence to over here. And then from, where are we? From this point on is all deer fence, all the ways right to the end of the development. So like,
Okay, thanks for clarifying that.
yeah, it's a little easier when I got control of
Yeah.
everything.
All right. I appreciate that update. Jennifer, another
And
question?
then one more, just to clarify, Richard, what you're requesting is from basically the access into the yard all the way to the north. Along that, like, so right where the hand is to the far right, all the way is what you're requesting. Oh, that's east and west.
Right here.
I'm turned around, I can't, I'm trying to figure out how to go into the yard.
And it's not only for garbage, but also as a barrier. So he's pushing snow off the road, he's not gonna be directing my fence. We'll have a fence there that he's gonna look at, so it's stop pushing snow where it's his fence. And he's mowing grass, he's not banging the deck anymore off the post, trying to get close, which I said is already happened. And so it just protects my fence that I put up there. I put a fence up there 20 years ago. He tore it all down, threw it away. This deer fence up. I don't know why you keep the wire and put another fence up on my side, but it needs to be there.
Okay, any further comments or questions from council? All right, we will indicate now that the public hearing is closed. So I need a motion to adjourn the public hearing.
I'll give you the motion to adjourn the public hearing.
All in favor?
In favor.
In favor?
In favor.
In favor.
Okay, carried, and a motion to go back into regular session of council.
I can give you that. Murray to give you a motion to go back
Thank
into regular
you, all in
council.
favor?
In favor?
Thanks for your time.
In favor.
Yep, thanks for coming in, and we'll have the bylaws coming up later in the meeting today.
In favor.
Yeah, that's right.
Did you guys?
Okay, that's all. Okay. Thank you for your time,
Do you want this, or would you like me to throw it away?
No, you can have it.
Thanks.
A memento from the meeting, eh?
Well, that's when he put the splits up, wasn't it? You know, it may take me a foot from cottage. See,
All right. We'll just carry on with our meeting, and then we'll be a few minutes before we get back down to the bylaw. That's all right.
Councillor Bruin just entered the meeting.
Okay. We shouldn't be too long. All right. I'm at 10.3, Candace, is that where we're at? All right, 10.3. Arlos informed us that Councillor Bruin has joined the meeting. We'll turn this one over to Arlos. Arlos.
Yep, thank you, Reeve Harris. Again, not to sound like a broken record, but the RFD is as it's written. I present it. I can do my best to answer some questions. There may be some ambiguity around my suggestion for administration to obtain feedback and or timelines, and if there is, I can do my best to answer those questions.
Now we have policy scheduled for some more time in September, is that
Beginning of
correct?
September we do.
And we have quite a number of items already that we're looking at, which is the purchasing bylaw. And what else did we table? Or the recreation and the land use. Have you got time to work on this before September?
Of what's listed, the 4 bullet points here, purchasing policies in progress, ICF is complete. Out of the procedure bylaw, code of conduct bylaw, if we were to prioritize one of them, I could at the very least, have, if council so wishes, I could have feedback obtained for initial discussion on either of those policies, preferably one of the two first, and then I can follow up on whichever one isn't chosen. But I would hope over the next couple months I could obtain some feedback from council, kind of using the method that we've used in recent past, and then that could form the basis of an initial discussion. Depending on the feedback I get back, I may or may not have some drafts to show or share, but at the very least I could have initial feedback for presentation and discussion. I think those topics, the procedural bylaw and the code of conduct bylaw, are topics that council would want to have a fair amount of discussion amongst themselves. Right? I don't want to I don't want to put in too much assumption from an administrative perspective on those particular bylaws. I would like it to be council driven. Specifically to the governance related bylaws that the MD of Taber has. So does that answer your question, Meryl? I know it was a little bit wordy, but it would, if council could afford me the opportunity to work on one at a time, that would be my preference. With regard to the code of conduct bylaw and procedural bylaw, and then council can identify their priority accordingly.
Meryl?
Yeah.
The code of conduct bylaw currently states that the bylaw shall be brought forward for review at the beginning of each term of council. And then when relevant legislation is amended, and at any other time that council considers appropriate to ensure that it remains current and continues to accurately reflect the standards of ethical conduct expected by members. So one of the reasons why I felt it should come forward is so that we're not just on top of it when it gets to our October organizational meeting. And so my hope is that we just set a timeline, and it doesn't have to supersede any of the other very important items that we've been working on. But I think it would be good to establish a time and a look that we can provide to give input as Arliss asked, and that we can be ready for our organizational meeting since it's already included in the bylaw.
Okay, so if you're saying one or the other, recommending the code of conduct, and I mean, like I said, I don't know, that's probably the first one of the two to get done.
At the end of the day, it's
Kind of.
council. They are connected, but council. I mean, I'll do what council's motion says. It just may defer other priorities. That's all.
Yeah. And
all I was asking for is maybe if we could knock off one at a time, whatever direction we set in one, we would hope that direction would be implemented into the following bylaw, the following, whether it be procedural bylaw or code of conduct bylaw. The code of conduct bylaw does have associated kind of procedures and policies attached to it. So we would want to make sure that is all in harmony. If we're changing the bylaw, we need to make sure that the associated guidelines and handbooks are consistent as well. But that being said, you have to start. So once it's started, the wheel is in motion, right?
Yeah. Okay, any thoughts around the table?
Would it matter which one we start first? Like, do you feel code of conduct would be better, or procedural? Like, I know we haven't really looked at the procedural bylaw really at all since we've been on council,
Yeah.
where we have revamped the code of conduct somewhat. So do you almost feel like the procedural bylaw would be more beneficial? But then I'm also trying to remember, does the procedural bylaw have some of our committees of council, and like, I feel like it was very prescriptive.
Yeah, I guess the insight that I could provide on that, Councillor Croson, would be, if you're asking me which to prioritize, and my kind of feel up to this point, I think we deal with code of conduct bylaw, and get it dealt with to the satisfaction of council as a whole, so that we can move on, and move on together in confidence with that this is the bylaw we want, and that we all understand how it's going to be implemented, and it's clear. And then with regard to the procedural bylaw, it wouldn't be a bad idea, I think, because we are going to be implementing some things here that are going to change even the procedures of council. In fact, we're doing it now as we live stream, as we move into video live stream. So that may not be a bad, I guess, active experiment to see as we go through some of those what things we may need to add to the procedural bylaw as a result of those. It is being reactive, I admit, but sometimes if you're too proactive, you're not sure what's going to happen. By that time, we will have quite a few meetings under the live stream scenarios that have taken place, and we can kind of use that as feedback for the partial feedback for portions of the procedural bylaw.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, and I think noting that the contract company noted that there was some non-alliances in the code of conduct. And when I look at the procedural bylaw, we did pass that February 22nd, 2018. So, I mean, 2 years' time is still quite a bit, but it's not that we never had eyes on it. So I just would like to have a timeline, and if our list feels the code of conduct will work, and then procedural bylaw changes may happen naturally as we change our procedure, then that would work. I just had hoped we would get this going, because we've sort of been talking about it for a while, and we had talked about following up on what the contract, I'm not using that word right, it's not contractor, what are they, consultant. The consultant had recommended as well. So do you want a timeline, Reeve, like a date? Like, I worry to say September is too much. Those other ones are huge, but is it October then?
Well, I was just going to look at the calendar here real quick.
Are we going to be scheduling another policy meeting in September or beginning of October?
We have one scheduled for the 14th of September,
September.
Following an SDA meeting.
I think that's something that you can start.
We could bring it forward that day and begin work on it.
Start what we refer to in the bureaucrat's world is the policy cycle. You start with the stakeholder consultation. In this case, the stakeholders are council. So by then I will have had feedback and consultation with council, and then we can have discussion, go through what's called problem identification as council together, and then we take what we identify as a group back and incorporate that into draft policies, draft bylaws.
Okay, so does that work for everybody? September the 14th?
Just wondering, so do you envision doing a council similar to what we did with the public lands, as well as the recreation study?
Yeah, doing
a questionnaire or something like that in regards to this?
Yeah, I think I would. Is
that what you envision?
I would do my best to approach it that way. Yeah, and then at the same time provide council perhaps with some examples from other municipalities. So there will be some, I guess, research requirement on the part of council as well. Just like with the recreations surveys and municipal lease land surveys, we did provide accompanying information for that. So while it does well, it does put requirement on administration, it will put that effort on, that effort onto council as well.
So recommended motion is that start working on this at a time established by council. So like I said, September the 14th, good enough time. Does that give you enough time to generate your questionnaires or your questions to council? And is that?
Yeah, I should have, that should give me enough time to actually.
And then like I said, we start on the September the 14th.
Present the feedback I received.
Right.
Yeah. That question is in part answerable by you folks as well.
Okay.
Should we have a
responding
specific?
to the surveys.
Oh, sorry. Should we have a specific date just in case something does get changed? Like, I mean, we have a scheduled policy meeting already for them, but if something gets changed, or do we need to be tied to a date, or just next policy meeting?
I'm fine with next policy meeting. I think it's, we got to be flexible with schedules, and who knows about COVID too, so.
Okay, so
I can make that motion that council review the council code of conduct bylaw and at the upcoming policy meeting.
You can even if you so desire, you can identify the policy date, the date of that, which is September 14th.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Tamara's give us a motion that council review the council code of conduct bylaw at an upcoming policy meeting. All in favor?
In favor.
In favor.
In favor.
Okay, carried.
In favor.
Whoops, thank you. TD Cal, a letter of support.
So again, this is, I believe it's a funding proposal for a program with regard to TD Cala. They're looking for a letter of support from MDF Taber Council as part of that process. Our board representative might be able to expand on that, but.
That is exactly what they're looking for, and they're continuing to do great work, and they have 8 different operating programs, and this is one of the continued funding models that this is not new, this is in addition and expands the program.
And this is just a letter of support for a grant, is that what it is? And we're not going to be looking to for money on this one?
No, this is strictly a letter of support, and I believe the letter is attached as well, so you could see what it includes.
Okay, any comments or questions on this request for support, letter of support?
I'll make the motion that a letter of support be provided to Taber District Community Adult Learning Association for their application for the Alberta Settlement and Integration Program grants for newcomer services and the ESL drop-in center.
Okay, any further comments? All in favor?
In favor?
In favor. In favor.
In favor.
Carried, thank you. Next one is a letter of support to Alberta, or to Taber District Community Adult Learning for their nomination for the 2020 Outstanding Contribution to the Community Adult Learning Award. And were you at that meeting also, Tamara?
Yes, I was, Reeve. This is to acknowledge the work that's been done by TD Cala and the experiences that they've given to people to get settled in our area, learn English, provide different work experience opportunities, and it just shows the great work. We are one of 3 newcomer drop-in sites in all of Alberta: Edmonton, Calgary, and Taber, and that speaks to volumes to what has been done. And the number of people who have graduated from their GED, the list goes on and on about our site, and they are definitely worthy of our support for this nomination. So in that, I would like to make the motion to write a letter of support be provided to Taber District Adult Learning Association for their nomination of the 2020 Outstanding Contribution to Community Adult Learning Award.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor.
In favor?
In favor.
In favor.
In favor.
Carried. You having fun with those kids, Levitt? All right, next item I have is 10.6, RETA. RETA funding for Foothills Little Municipal Association meeting.
Very good. So this was I believe 2 or 3 council meetings ago. Council had given some direction to administration to bring back a potential resolution to, I believe, to take to a Little Bow Association meeting. Foothills Little Bow Municipal Association meeting, sorry. That being said, we did do some research into it, and it looks like at the spring resolution session, there was pretty much a resolution to this effect put forward. So I guess what administration is putting forward to council for consideration and is to simply endorse that resolution or that sentiment. We do have a letter drafted regardless to go to the appropriate ministry, outlining our council's perspective on the funding of the RETAs. But that being said, did you still, I guess the question is still, did you still want to see a MDF Tabor specific resolution being brought forward at the Foothills Little Bow Association meetings, or are we okay with what's been put forward already at the RMA resolutions?
I know oftentimes multiple resolutions over a number of years, somewhat endorsing the same principles are brought forward, and the importance of that is making sure the government keeps it in their mind that it's an issue for municipalities. So, I mean, what does council want to do? I think it's always good to keep these issues at the forefront, but like I said, there was a resolution this spring regarding this. Brian, what's your thoughts here?
Just thinking it over, Merrill, and I don't disagree with what you're saying, but the fact it was just in the spring, I could see more merit maybe bringing it back in either next spring or next fall to keep it current. It certainly is an active resolution that we're working on as we speak, but to bring one back in a year or so would bring it up to the top again. I'm not sure 6 months after.
Okay.
But I could see in a year or so making sure that it's brought up again. That's my opinion.
Be a good bear pit topic for somebody.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I would say it'd also be a good item to discuss if they're coming down on the 14th. Certainly refresh them.
That's Al and Gerald.
Correct, yeah.
Okay. So we have a couple of recommendations, some alternates. Any suggestions on what you'd like to do with it?
I guess the only concern I have is that funding wasn't awarded and there was letters and a resolution brought forward and it didn't change it. And we know that if economic development, the foot's taken off the gas, it's hard to return to that same spot. So that would be my only concern, that if we wait for 6 months or a year, that it doesn't stay in the forefront and all of a sudden the RETAs have gone by the wayside, because there's not many left.
I know South Crow's meeting is tomorrow, right? And I'm not 100% sure what they're proposing as far as trying to make up the difference, or if they're just going to take the foot off the gas for a while. I'm not sure. Like, do you know, like, from the...
I hadn't heard, but I'm sure we'll find out tomorrow what their plan is. But I'm in agreement with Tamara. I mean, it was the resolution was passed in the spring. Don't know if RMA's had the opportunity though to draft something in regards to that. So I agree with Brian that maybe we should bring that up when Gerald and Al are here. But also, I don't think it hurts to send letters saying, you know, and refer to the resolution in the letters to the province. I don't think there's any harm or foul in doing that, is there, Brian or Arlos?
I don't think so. We do have a letter ready to send as well, that the Reeve go under the Reeve signature. That was part of the previous council direction, so that is ready to go as an aside. Right. Sorry, I didn't want
Just to follow up to Councillor Mianaga's comment, and maybe if you structured the resolution stating that it wasn't in the current budget, it does change the intent of it a little bit, being that it was left out of the current budget. If you could reframe it that way, might be worthwhile. Or decreased in the current budget, I guess would be the correct terminology.
My perspective is, and I think I've said it before, I don't think our oil and gas is coming back anytime soon. It's new economic development, new industry, new businesses coming into the municipality that's going to make up the difference. And we can't, at a time like this, we can't be taking our foot off the gas, as Councillor Mianaga suggested.
Well, Councillor Mianaga led us into the thought of losing these, and the problem with that is then you lose people like Peter, who are very very good at their jobs, and then you lose these people and you have to start over. And when you're starting from zero, it's hard to catch up to where you were when you left off. And so we need to make sure we maintain the readers that we do have, because I see that as one of the paths out of the problems we're in right now, is through the readers.
All right, go ahead, Tamara.
Our staff has written a very good, therefore it be resolved and further be it resolved, asking for maintain or higher funding. So I think it fits with Councillor Bruin said that it be included in the budget. The only thing that could happen is if it could not pass at Foothills Little Bow, but once it gets to the RMA resolution committee, they may deem that this is already an active resolution. So I don't feel that the staff's already done the work on it. So it doesn't require much more work, and it doesn't harm us to bring it forward. It would be at the RMA resolution level that it could be removed, and we would have to accept that.
And I think, Tamara, as long as it's current, and again, refer back to that it's not in the current budget, so that would make it current or different than the existing resolution.
Okay, motion one way or the other?
You make that motion? Go ahead. My name's on lots.
I guess I'll make the motion that council endorse RMA resolution 5-20S at the September meeting of the Foothills Little Bow Municipal Association, and that letters be sent to the minister and local MLAs addressing the reduction of funding.
Okay, any further comments?
Just clarification, John, you said endorse. Do you want to endorse or have a new resolution?
I guess it would be, is it necessary to have a new one stating the fact that it wasn't in the current budget, or the current budget was cut and that we want it to go back to the old funding or increased? Is that necessary, Arlos or Brian? What are your thoughts?
I think whatever
I would draft.
Whatever you want emphasized, include it in the motion, and we'll make sure.
Then I think we should be addressing the fact that it's not in the current budget, and we'd like to see it in the upcoming budgets.
Okay.
If you could work that into a motion, that'd be awesome.
We can integrate that into the motion that council's about to vote on.
Yeah. So, what's the motion then, Candace? Have you got? Can you read it back, or the changes that John suggested?
This is awkward. Just speak.
Yeah. All of a sudden, the barrier's not such a good idea, eh? It's a hindrance.
Can you just one more time tell me what you want to include?
Well, just to include the fact that it wasn't included in this year's budget, and that we recognize the resolution that was passed in the spring, but to bring it forward again, that I guess that it wasn't in this year's budget, and we'd like to see those funds returned, either to an equal or excess value to what they were currently previously. That's a little too wordy. I'm sure you can fix it.
We have lots of time, John. Maybe just draft up a resolution for next meeting. Would that work?
Go ahead and read what you've got there, Candace.
Even during council meetings, and to take the opportunity to make a plug, scenarios like this, I would hope to address in a bylaw such as the procedural bylaw, right? How to confirm and clarify motions and those types of scenarios. It does not hurt at all to take the time during a council meeting to do that. I know sometimes it feels like
Forever
there's a
sitting
lull,
here.
but it's absolutely worth taking the time to clarify council's motion, because at the end of the day, it's council's motion.
So some of the awkwardness is necessary.
Yep.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
That council bring forward a resolution to the Foothills Littlebow Municipal Association meeting in September referencing RETA funding not being included in the current budget and the importance of retaining the funding as that was previously provided. And that letters be sent to the minister and local MLAs addressing the reduction in funding.
John's given the nod.
That's exactly what I said, just better.
Sound very smart guy.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
In favor.
In favor.
In favor.
Carried. All right, now we're down to bylaws. Bylaw 1962. Any from our public hearing, is there any more concerns, anything that we would like to add into the area structure plan? That's first, right? The area structure plan. That anybody have any concerns with the area structure plan? John?
I guess my only comment or concern would be on the, I guess in the original area structure plan, there was a requirement to have 8-foot fencing around the garbage containers, and that isn't the case, is that right?
We got some clarification on that. So
Okay.
This is an interesting application. So back in 2007, the property was rezoned to private commercial, a portion, and there was no area structure plan at that time. So the development permit approval that I read to you was actually on an appeal, and the appeal conditions set was the requirement for a 5-foot page wire fence and the 8-foot chain link around the garbage enclosures. Subsequent to that, in 2009, an area structure plan was approved. It didn't indicate specifically the height of the fencing. It's not until the phase 3, where only the portion of phase 3, which is on the north end, there was to be a 6-foot, in the application it indicates a 6-foot high trash fence that would border the north and the east components of phase 3 only. So it's not the entire extent of the northern boundary. So the development permit that was issued for that component indicated compliance with the area structure plan. So we would have to go out and confirm whether that small portion actually is 5 feet or 6 feet. So that's the confusion with the fencing. In this newest proposal, it does indicate a 6-foot high deer fence along the east portion of this. And then also too, on the northern portion in phase 3, there was to be some caraganas and some other landscaping, and we will confirm whether or not that's currently in compliance. So that's the confusion.
Okay.
So the garbage fencing was not in the area structure plan, is that right?
Correct. It was in the original development permit approval, which went to appeal.
So is there a requirement for that fencing?
Yes, in different components. So the original was approved at 5 feet because there's multiple phases, right? So phase 1 is 5 feet. Phase 2 is south, and there were no specific requirements there. Phase 3 is the portion that's to the north, and that clearly indicated a 6-foot high fence. So that's what we'll have to check, whether or not there's compliance. But the very original development permit that I read to you was for phase 1, for a 5-foot high fence. Then phase 2, there's no specific requirements. Phase 3, northern portion and eastern portion of phase 3 only. And now phase 4, he's proposing 6 foot along the eastern boundary.
My question is more in regards to garbage containment around the garbage containers, because you said it was in part of it, but not in all, like, so on that part of it, not the perimeter fencing, but the fencing around the garbage containers, because that was supposed to be an 8-foot chain link, or is that something that was in a different phase?
That was phase 1. So that was the original development approval that was approved prior to an area structure plan being approved. It clearly indicated an 8-foot chain link enclosure around the garbage enclosures in phase 1. That didn't carry through in the area structure plan. However, that is a development permit condition. So we certainly can check into that. Now the means of garbage enclosure has changed based on the discussion. It was formerly just open trash cans. And so now it sounds like he has a different method of containing garbage. So we'll have to see how that relates to the original development permit approval.
I imagine with every development, garbage is their responsibility, but you could outline it to say it's your responsibility to, and if you see that it's moved into your neighbor's place, it's your responsibility to go pick it up. Is that unreasonable?
No, that's very reasonable.
Other than he might get shot for doing it.
Well, I would recommend too that we could place another amendment in this area structure plan, clearly indicating that it is the operator's responsibility to ensure garbage is contained on site and does not travel across the boundary or something to that effect.
Yeah, I think that we can, try and address the concerns, and obviously garbage is one of them.
Rudy Parrish, just one point of order, because I missed the public hearing. I won't be voting on this.
Okay. We just got a small discussion going on the side here. Okay, is there any further questions, discussion, or comments before we go to second reading?
I just had a clarification. So Mr. Ferguson spoke that he's not against the proposal. So would some of his concerns, perhaps we can reevaluate them at the development permit application, but that doesn't have bearing on the bylaws that are presented today, the two, because he said he's not in opposition to the development.
Certainly his concerns with respect to garbage and fencing can be addressed at the time of the development permit application. However, if council is interested in extending the consideration of fencing for garbage control or security or access beyond this extent of the current area structure plan, it does need to be added as an amendment to this area structure plan.
Well, I think, again, maybe not, if I don't haven't paid close enough attention, but I think almost the whole distance from the west to the east is fenced in one way or the other at the north end. There's a deer fence, and then an 8-foot slab fence. Is that? I haven't been out there for a while, so I can't remember.
For the extent of the campground, but beyond the campground, I was just out there. I remember the fencing that Mr. Ferguson spoke of that he's installed. So it does go down to a standard agricultural fence. Yeah.
Barbed wire fence.
Once you're from the range road in, then it's the barbed wire fence, and then the applicant's house, and then the taller fencing does exist.
Any other?
So I guess the development is totally contained within this applicable fence, I guess, or what's necessary for the permits. And what Mr. Ferguson was asking for was an additional, I guess, garbage fencing from the resort boundary all the way to the range road on the north side of that access road, I guess you'd call it.
That's correct.
So does anybody feel like we need to add more conditions, more fence conditions in here?
I don't know, you can add 10 more fences and you're still not, there's some garbage flying around, you're not gonna get it all, no matter which way the wind blows.
Now, you said that the garbage containment would go in a development permit or in the area structure plan, just to confirm. Like if we had to have a garbage component, would it need to be in the area structure plan? Does that make sense?
No, I'm not quite. I'm confused now about
Okay.
garbage enclosures versus the fencing.
Oh, okay, sorry. So I'm not talking garbage enclosures, but I'm talking about containment. Like, so you had kind of said before, like if garbage is an issue, we could have an amendment or something that would state that they would do the best of their ability to contain the garbage, etc. Like that comment that you had made, would that be an amendment to the area structure plan?
Yes.
Okay.
So if that's something council's interested in, the recommendation is that you would have an amendment that clearly indicates in the area structure plan that the applicant is responsible. The applicant will be responsible for ensuring that garbage is contained within their boundaries. And you could even indicate that the development authority may place applicable conditions at the time of development permit approval. And then the second recommended amendment is the statement about the wetlands and the applicant being required to obtain any necessary approvals.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Just say that wetlands portion one more time.
So with the wetlands, we do have a recommendation for a section to be added in what we'd call other, and that would state that the developer is responsible for reviewing and considering the provincial wetlands inventory as applicable and ensuring development in compliance with applicable provincial wetlands policies.
Okay, anybody have any other concerns, questions? So you make that as part of the bylaw change then?
And the motion for the bylaw could just read as amended, and then we can add the amendments, or do we need to state the amendments in the motion?
You'd need to state the amendments in the motion.
Okay.
If you don't feel comfortable passing it at this point, we can prepare amendments for your consideration, and then you'd pass it at the next council meeting, or you can clearly specify the amendment here today.
Okay. It's your-
And so when I'm looking at the area structure plan, could you just outline to me where that would be? Is it in the and whereas? Or is it, just trying to understand what it looks like, the bylaw?
In terms of where you would make these amendments, Councillor Mianega?
Correct, or changes, so for second reading.
So, something I would, if I could just offer a few words, Reeve Harris, something I might suggest from a perspective of clarity. I think that I think it'd be prudent on our part. Administration could bring back these proposed amendments to the next council meeting, and then you're voting on what you're seeing.
Yeah, what's in front
And
of
I think
us.
that'd probably be the easiest.
So I've got two that I've got the way maybe there's more, but the one about containing the garbage within the development, and the second is the responsibility for making sure that they're abiding by applicable wetlands policies. Was there any others that anybody had? Okay, well, if you can make those amendments and then bring it back, and then we know exactly what we're dealing with here.
Do we need a motion for administration to bring back an amended version of the bylaw?
Yeah, that would, it's always good to get motions of council.
Okay, I'll make a motion for administration to bring back an amended bylaw to include the wetlands policy as well as the garbage containment.
Okay, any more discussion? Levitt, this is your area. Any comments or concerns?
No, no concerns. I think what we're doing is probably the right thing, making sure we're getting it right first, getting it right before we make a decision.
Arliss.
Reeve Harris, just a quick question to our planner and director of planning. Once we bring back amendments for second and third reading, do we have our public hearing requirements have essentially been met now as of today, right?
Yes, so these are two components that were clearly addressed as part of the public hearing, and so any amendments that you make based on these components wouldn't constitute a new requirement for a public hearing.
Okay. So until the bylaw is passed in a development application to actually do the work, there's no work to be done out there, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right, Jennifer's given us a motion to have administration bring back an amended bylaw discussing the garbage issue as well as the wetlands issue. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
In favor.
In favor?
In favor.
Favor.
Carried. Thanks, Brian. Sorry, it's a little too fast for you. So, do we deal with 1963 now, or we got to do this one first?
I would suggest we do this one first. That's typically how the MD has undertaken these, so do the ASP and then the rezoning.
Okay. Thank you. All right.
Yep.
I'm seeing nods, yep. Somebody prepared to give a motion to table bylaw 1963 hearing, not hearing, readings.
I make a motion to table bylaw 1963, is that what it's called?
Yep. All in favor?
In favor.
In favor?
In favor.
Abstain. Favor.
Carried. All right, thank you. Thanks, Bonnie. Thanks, Kirk. All right, consent agenda exemptions, Highway 3 Federated Co-op Limited Corner. Oh, council request for information motions, not consent agenda exemptions. So what do we want to do with this? Do we want to write a letter of concern to Alberta Transport? Oh, Candace.
We got two different items going, so the consent agenda exemption will be the resolution for Foothills Legal Ed Service Board Convention, Conference. Then the next item, which is council request information.
Can't hear Candace.
Go ahead, Candace.
Sorry, I was just saying that there's just two different items. We pulled one item out of the consent agenda, which would be the resolutions for Foothills Little Bow and Egg Service Board Conference. Then the next item would be number 13, the council request for motion, which would be the Alberta Transportation one for FCL Corner.
Yeah, so you would want to deal with the exemption first?
Right, okay, so the exemption was the resolution to Foothills Little Bow on the oil well weed issues, as well as the same issue going to the Ag Service Board Conference. So if somebody wants to make a motion on that one.
I'd like to make a motion that we bring a resolution forward to the next September Foothills Little Bow. Have administration draft a resolution in regards to the problems with oil and gas and the weeds that or I guess the lack of weed control and how it's impacting our agricultural just negative agriculture impacts. There doesn't seem to be anything in the current structure to be able to deal with this in a good way, I guess.
Okay. Any further discussion on that motion?
Can I just add to that, John? Can you also add maintenance to that? I'm not sure a lot of these well sites are being maintained. Some of them have been 4 or 5 years abandoned. I'm not sure anybody's actually going out there and checking to make sure that your pressure gauges or rust or anything else is being looked after.
I guess we
weeds or that you want maintenance is other.
I guess we could say weed control and maintenance as part
general
of it as
maintenance.
Well. Yeah. I guess it would be also.
Go ahead, Brian.
Go ahead. Bill 12 is being adopted, which does address it a little bit, but I don't think it would hurt to put this resolution forward.
I think it needs to address not just the oil sites, but also their roads as well. So any, I think it would have to also name that. I guess the best one probably to draft the resolution or part of it would be through Brian Pierce, because he has a real good understanding of what the rules currently are and how we can write a resolution, I guess, that would be best.
If it's okay with council, we could receive that direction to prepare a draft resolution and then come back to council for
sure. That sounds
for
good.
approval. Yep.
So I guess I give a motion to administration to come up with a draft resolution for Foothills Little Bow at the September meeting, or prior to the September meeting. What is the deadline to have submissions for the September meeting?
I don't know the deadline, but we'll deal with it as soon as we can.
Yeah. I imagine around the first.
They can always be brought up as an emergent.
Yeah. Okay, John's given us a motion. All in favor?
In favor.
In favor.
In favor.
Okay, that one's carried.
Favor.
Thanks. That one's carried. The next one, the council request for information motions, the Highway 3 Federated Co-op Limited corner.
This one again, I'm not sure. I think it's important that we handle this the right way. Councilor Minaga brought up a point of lines or painting the arrows, and that might be, I think that might be what we ask for. But then maybe to have, because I think everybody that's looked at this intersection says the same thing, that the sight lines don't seem very good. So even if they could just have another look at the sight lines, because it is different than a number of the intersection improvements that we've seen at different corners along Highway 3. This one is different, or at least it feels that way. And maybe the arrows and the painting of that might help, but I think there is still a problem with sightline, and I don't know how to put that in a motion, but I don't want to I guess step on anybody's toes, but it's also important that we keep this, keep safety in front of mind. And right now, it doesn't appear to be as safe as some of the other intersections that we've seen improvements on.
Administration can draft a letter to that effect, to asking if Alberta Transportation would consider either additional explanation as to the status of the intersection, as well as whether or not they would consider the painting of those lines or the painting of those arrows, and let it kind of rest with them for a response and see where we go from there.
So would that be okay to put in the motion that administration just draft a proposed letter to bring back to the next council meeting? Would that be the best, Arlos?
Well, we can draft
Or
and send the
we can just
letter.
draft it and send it?
Yeah.
I guess that would be my motion then, that administration draft a letter and send it to Alberta Transportation with those parameters that you've outlined.
Expressing the concerns related to that particular intersection.
Yep. Okay. Any more comments or questions on John's motion? All in favor?
In favor?
In favor?
In favor.
Favor.
Okay, carried. That's it for our open session, Candace. I'm down to the bottom, so we'll need a motion to go into closed.
I give you the motion to go into closed.
So move, Brian.
Murray beat you. All in favor?
In
In
favor.
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 Carried.